The rugged, mist-shrouded mountains of America harbor countless dangers and enduring legends. But deep within the heart of this vast wilderness lies a darker, more profound secret that has baffled historians and scientists for hundreds of years. They were not black, they were not white, they were not Native American. They were an enigmatic community who seemed to belong nowhere, isolated, self-sufficient, and fiercely protective of their own story, living completely hidden on the fog-drenched peaks of the American frontier. Neighbors and travelers who encountered them described a people unlike any they had seen before, striking, unmistakable, and entirely their own. Who were they? How did they arrive in these unforgiving mountains? And perhaps, most importantly, where did they vanish to? Today, we are pulling back the centuries-old veil of mist to uncover the true, untold story of the Melungeons, the legendary lost tribe of Appalachia. Our story begins in Hancock County, Tennessee, one of the wildest and most breathtakingly beautiful places in the Appalachian mountain range. Even today, there are no railroads or massive interstates here. Only a handful of narrow, twisting two-lane state highways meander through this incredibly remote area. For centuries, only the hardiest of souls dared to call these treacherous mountains home. And among them was this mysterious community. For the most part, their population was clustered atop a geographical fortress known as Newman's Ridge, hidden in pockets like Snake Holler and Blackwater Creek. Historically, the Melungeons kept entirely to themselves. They lived separate from both Native American tribes and white settlers. Because of their profound isolation, their existence went largely unnoticed until the late 1800s. Yet, scattered throughout history, there were tantalizing clues. In the late 1600s, French explorers reported finding men who fit no known description. Neither the native tribes they knew nor the European settlers spreading through the colonies, hiding in the mountain pockets of modern-day Tennessee. Later, in the 1780s, the famous frontiersman John Sevier documented a community living apart from both settlers and native tribes, people who called themselves Melungeons and fiercely claimed Portuguese descent. The first official government acknowledgement of their existence came in the 1795 census, which inexplicably listed exactly 300 free non-white persons living in the mountains of East Tennessee. Since there had never been slaves or more than 50 black individuals living in this specific area at the time, historians realized this anomalous demographic could only be the Melungeons. By the late 1800s, that number had surged to over 700. Suddenly, the existence of this mysterious group began to appear in sensationalized newspaper headlines across America, attracting the curiosity of historians and scientists who descended on the region to investigate. The sheer silence of the mountains gave birth to a myriad of wild, spectacular theories. Some researchers speculated they were descendants of Phoenicians who fled the ancient city of Carthage after the Romans conquered them in 146 BC. According to this legend, these refugees migrated across the Straits of Gibraltar, settled in the Iberian Peninsula as North African traders and settlers, and eventually crossed the Atlantic. After their ship was marooned off the coast of South Carolina, they were rejected by local populations and pushed inland. Another popular theory suggested they were survivors of the infamous lost colony of Roanoke. In 1585, Sir Walter Raleigh established the first English settlement in North America. When supply ships returned 5 years later, the 120 settlers had completely vanished, leaving behind only the word Croatoan carved into a tree. Did they assimilate with local native tribes? Still others claim the Melungeons descended from Spanish conquistadors. In 1540, Hernando de Soto drove an army of 600 men into the valleys searching for gold. His expedition was a disaster, and many troops who stayed behind formed communities alongside native populations. In 1567, Captain Juan Pardo led another Spanish expedition. Following a devastating conflict in 1568, survivors fled into the Appalachian wilderness. Were the Melungeons the living legacy of these lost armies? While outsiders debated their origins, the Melungeons were fighting a desperate, quiet war for survival. In 1834, the state of Tennessee adopted a new constitution, and the legal landscape shifted dramatically. The new law was brutally clear. Only free white persons could vote, own significant property, or testify in court. In a single stroke, Melungeon families who owned mountain farms for generations were legally reclassified as free persons of color. The tragic case of Vardy Collins flawlessly illustrates this systematic unraveling of their identity. Vardy was a proud Melungeon who had bravely fought in the War of 1812. He owned a beautiful 300-acre farm. However, when a white neighbor decided to seize his land, Vardy took the matter to court. The judge ruled that because Vardy was legally a person of color, he was strictly forbidden from testifying against a white man. Vardy lost absolutely everything. His family, like countless others, was exiled to the steepest, most barren ridges of the mountains. As the nation was violently torn apart by the American Civil War, the Melungeon men found themselves in a deadly trap. The Confederate Army sought to conscript them into forced labor battalions, stripping them of the very freedom their families had protected for generations. Conversely, the Union Army, encountering people who fit no recognized category, turned them away without offering protection. With neither side offering sanctuary, many Melungeon men chose to survive by vanishing. They hid in deep mountain caves throughout the war, only emerging under the cover of darkness to tend hidden gardens. Even after the war, the mountains could no longer offer complete protection. In 1924, Virginia passed sweeping racial integrity laws. State authorities systematically tracked down families who had lived quietly for generations. Surname lists were compiled, investigators were sent into communities, and generations of quiet existence were suddenly pulled into government registries. Official records were rewritten, family ties were challenged in courts, and children found themselves turned away from schoolhouses. Terrified families fled to distant cities, burning family photographs and destroying genealogical records. By the 1930s, as new roads snaked up the mountainsides, younger generations descended from Newman's Ridge. By the 1960s, the original Melungeon population had practically been quietly absorbed into the broader American story. For decades, the true identity of the lost tribe of Appalachia seemed destined to remain an unsolved historical footnote. But in the 2000s, an explosive boom in commercial DNA technology changed everything. Tens of thousands of Americans submitted their genetic material to massive databases. Initial results were confusing, showing a remarkably layered blend of African, Native American, and European ancestry. However, the ultimate plot twist, the definitive answer that shattered centuries of myth, arrived in 2012. A groundbreaking comprehensive DNA study published in the Journal of Genetic Genealogy, led by researcher Roberta Estes, finally cracked the code. The scientific team painstakingly collected DNA samples from families historically documented as core Melungeons. When the results were analyzed, every romanticized origin story gave way to a far more profound American truth. The Y chromosome data, which strictly traces the paternal line from father to son, traced back to West and Central Africa, carried by free men who had built lives in colonial Virginia before racial laws reshaped everything. The mitochondrial DNA, which traces the maternal line from mother to daughter, pointed almost exclusively to Northern Europe. The Melungeons were the direct descendants of free African men and European women who had formed families in Virginia during the mid-1600s, a brief, unprecedented window of time before strict, race-based slavery laws were codified in the colonies. When the legal landscape darkened and racial laws became brutally restrictive, these families fled into the impenetrable sanctuary of the Appalachian Mountains. To protect their freedom and their children's future, they forged a brilliant two-word armor: "We are Portuguese." This ingenious act of reinvention was not a mark of shame. It was an incredibly sophisticated survival strategy. By claiming a Mediterranean heritage, they operated within a legal gray area that kept them free. DNA had finally revealed that their legendary Portuguese origin was a brilliant shield designed to protect their children in a world that left them no room to exist. Who were the Melungeons? DNA has finally spoken. They were the children of America's earliest forgotten promise of freedom, born in the fleeting years before the laws of race reshaped colonial Virginia forever. Their story is not one of ancient Carthage or sunken galleons, but of resilient, free families who sought refuge in the clouds. And their legendary claim of being Portuguese was not a deception born of shame, but one of the most brilliant, enduring survival strategies in human history, a shield that worked flawlessly for over 200 years. This mesmerizing mystery, unearthed from the dusty pages of history and the very building blocks of our DNA, reminds us just how incredibly fragile our identities and our pasts truly are. The secrets of the ancient world and the forgotten corners of our own backyards continue to shed light on the incredible lengths humans will go to in order to survive. Thank you for watching. What does this extraordinary story tell us about identity, survival, and the resilience of forgotten communities? Share your thoughts below. If you want to continue exploring historical mysteries like this one that reshape our understanding of the world, do not forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Until our next adventure, stay curious, stay inspired, and keep exploring the past.